Great to see you.
Great to see you.
What a beautiful afternoon here in Charlottesville, in the back of Pavilion 10, the garden of Pavilion 10. I'm Ian Solomon, Dean of the Batten School of Leadership and Public Policy here at UVA, and it is my absolute honor to welcome Governor Gilmore, Jim Gilmore, with an incredible background in public service, whether it was serving as an intelligence agent during the Vietnam War for the U.S. Army, or a two-time presidential candidate, a very distinguished governor of the Commonwealth of Virginia, service as an ambassador. Maybe we'll talk more about that. And really just devoted to this country's national security, the economic prosperity of its people. We don't agree on every policy issue, but I have enormous respect for his tenacity and his commitment to really improving lives for people in the Commonwealth. So welcome, Governor Gilmore.
Great. I'm sure we agree on virtually everything. But in the meanwhile, of course, as I'm a graduate of the university and the undergraduate school and the law school. So I've spent a lot of time on the lawn, a lot of time in the pavilions, a lot of time in the gardens. I just think this is one of the most beautiful places you could be. And I think students that come here are taken aback by the beauty of the place.
That is true. And I'm always inviting students to come spend time in the garden. I might have to invite you back. We do karaoke up on that little platform right up there, organized by the students. So if you're a fan of karaoke, we will have you back.
Oh, I'm good at that.
Okay, fantastic. Fantastic. Well, I'm really grateful for your time today. And I thought we'd talk about one of the core themes of the Batten School to start, which is leadership. And one of the debates that is sometimes had is whether leadership can be taught or whether it's inborn into people. Now, we're a school of leadership, so we are teaching leadership. We clearly have a point of view in that debate. But I'm curious about your thoughts about leadership and whether it's something that can be taught and maybe how you have learned or developed your own leadership.
Well, first of all, I think that it's always pretentious for somebody to come on and start talking about what kind of leader he is, because it's self-flattering. And I don't like people to do that, and I don't like to do that. But see, you've asked me about leadership. I've had the opportunity to be elected and to serve in a number of offices. Each one of them required leadership. So I've often reflected and wondered what motivated me to begin to become engaged in public policy and to assert over and over again the desire to move up and further on into political office and to leadership positions otherwise. I'll give you a quick answer to this. When I was in high school, all the way back then,
you were a drum major in your high school band.
I was a drum major, which is instructive. But mostly I was a clarinetist, and I learned how to play the clarinet and how to participate in concert bands. And I was given the opportunity to go to Europe with this major concert band. And the soloist for that band was a clarinetist. And I listened to him and I said, I'm never going to be that gifted. So I started looking around for other things. And a fellow came to me at the time. He was a Democrat and he wanted to run for the House of Delegates, the state legislature. And he said, I'd like you to handle a precinct for me. And I said, he was a Democrat because there weren't any Republicans then hardly. And I said, well, yeah, I'll handle a precinct for you. So I went door to door in that precinct. I visited every house in that precinct. And when the election was over, he lost. But I carried the precinct. And I said, I think maybe I found what I want to do. And so I began to engage in politics and try to be influential. And I guess that's how I got my start, Ian.
And what was it about that? Was it the meeting people and getting to know individuals and their concerns, the needs? Was it the competitiveness and the adrenaline of a race? What was it that really caught you from that?
Well,
time?
I would like to say it's because I wanted to participate in a way that I mattered as a person. And I'm not sure I came from a background where it was going to be automatic that I was going to matter. I wasn't the son of a lawyer. I wasn't the son of a CPA. I wasn't the son of a rich person. My father was a working man. He gave to me qualities. We had a good, successful life. He gave to me qualities of determined integrity. But, in the strata of the world, sometimes the children of the successful take it more for granted than I did.
And as you think back to your first time, working, managing a precinct and working in politics, and I assume you didn't know how to do it when you first started. You had to dive in and figure a lot of things out, I assume, and just your natural curiosity and hunger to make things happen. What was that learning process like? I loved how you've demonstrated humility several times already in this conversation, but I imagine at that point, probably was some fear associated with it. Am I going to mess this up? Who's counting on me? What was that like emotionally for you?
No, it was easy. It was easy. You go to the door, you knock on the door, you say you're representing a candidate, you got a card, you just say, I hope you'll vote for my candidate. And then they'll ask you a question or they'll say thank you. And that's it. It's easy enough to do. And if you do enough of it, your candidate is becoming known and their positions are becoming known. It was easy. It was easy. Now, I will admit that there was a time when there was a dog that threatened me going door to door. But I was not afraid of a dog any more than I was afraid of the voters. So I turned my back on the dog to walk up to the step, and the dog attacked me and bit me on the behind. I'll never forget it. My introduction to politics. And they've been biting me ever since.
I imagine you learned lessons also from some of the unsuccessful races that you've run.
Oh, yeah.
It takes a lot of courage to decide you're running for president twice. What have you learned from that process?
Well, running for president is a whole different game. If you're trying to be the president of the United States, it's a massive endeavor. And I do not regret running for president in 2016. I do not regret that to this day. The learning and education and exposure and opportunity I had to talk to people in New Hampshire and Iowa, California, all across the United States of America was a rich experience you really just can't get any other way. Mm-hmm. And I'm glad that I did it. I learned a lot about contemporary politics by running and the way that American politics has changed. And the theory of my running was I would be in a position to expose myself through the debates and through other presentation of my ideas and spiral up and raise more money and become a real candidate. That opportunity never presented itself in 2016, and I understand why not. So you learn a lot by doing these things. I learned a lot. I've run races that I couldn't win, and I only have run one election that I ran for I should never have run for. But other than that, I've won more than I've lost. We're about the same. So, and I've had opportunity to serve in some very significant offices.
Right.
So I don't regret anything that I've done in my life.
Well, it's clear your leadership journey is not over. I mean, even just coming back and talking to our students at the Batten School is a contribution and hopefully inspiring others to take initiative, to take risk, to sign up and, knock on doors, run for office themselves or support other candidates. So, I mean, I think you're clearly not finished with your contributions to public life.
Well, I feel an affinity to the university. I am critical of the university in a lot of ways, and I'm as well as I am of all higher education. But if I have an affinity any place, it's UVA, and that's what I am. You cut me, I bleed orange and blue.
That's great. And I actually think, well, I have my things I'm critical of the university for, but I actually want us to be cultivating students with a natural skepticism who are always looking at institutions and saying, what could it be doing better? Who could it be serving more effectively? How could it be more efficient? How could it be more fair? Right? I hope that's the seeds we are planting our students at the Batten School.
Well, I hope so. And I think that when I was first approached to talk to the Batten School, I couldn't quite figure out how you get have a conversation about something that is as ambiguous as leadership. But you asked me a question. Is it inherent or is it taught? I don't know. What I tried to do was to explain what my journey was and how I ended up doing it. And did it come from within or not? It probably did come from within based upon my circumstances at the time I got started. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, you do learn skills. And sometimes, my skills have not been perfect. And there were some times when I had opportunities to do things, and because of clumsiness, I didn't succeed. Mm-hmm. But on the other hand, I learned enough skills to be able to be successful in the major offices I think I've held. I
sometimes think of leadership, we could talk about the clarinet playing you did in high school, right? there are people who might have some inborn real talent, but everybody can get better with practice, with instruction, with a very deliberate focus. So yes, it's possible that some people have a natural leadership edge, but even they improve with good instruction and practice.
I think that's right. I think that maybe the word that comes to me is the word of being gifted. I was a hard-working musician, and I think I excelled as a instrument clarinetist. I excelled. I went to all the national bands and European bands and all these kinds of things and played concert music. But I learned that I didn't have a gift. There are people in the United States and in the world who are gifted musicians. I was not a gifted musician. So I went looking for something else where maybe I could use the natural gifts that I've been given to do some things in. And I think I found politics to be that avocation.
And I suspect that politics also is a combination of gifts and hard work. You're not right. Gifts alone probably won't carry the day.
No. A few years ago, someone approached me who said that he wanted to run for the United States Senate. And he was a nice fellow. And he had a commendable background, both in business and in everything else. And I told him, I said, you understand, this is the hardest thing you can ever do. Don't kid yourself about this. This will be the hardest thing you can possibly ever do. And he absorbed that and he went away and he came back 3 months later and said, I'm getting out because you're right. It was the hardest thing I'd ever tried to do.
And these days, it's not just hard as far as I can tell. It's also often dangerous. I do some work, the Batten School does some work with political leaders of both parties who bring, the program brings Democrats, Republicans together. And I'll tell you, one of the things they bond over, the death threats that all their families face, the taunting that their kids receive at school. It's an area of something they can all agree on is how toxic and dangerous. Several of them have actually, most of them have had death threats. A few of them have actually been shot at. And it's a really terrible feature of American politics these days.
I think the politics are more emotional now than ever before, but this is not new. There's really nothing new about this, really. If you look at the sweep of American history, the guys in Philadelphia sat down and, wrote the Declaration under the guns of the British Army. And there were Tories at the time, Benedict Arnold. What about the Civil War? I don't think it's probably possible to have a more emotional situation where the clash of ideas about what the future should look like should come to the point where thousands upon thousands of men on both sides would enlist in armies. And they weren't just running around shooting at things. They were organized as military armies. So the emotions and the beliefs were very intense at that time. We've seen this kind of problem all through even modern politics today. But I think that right now I am very disturbed by the polarization and the emotion that's involved. And that's largely because I think that there are left-wing and right-wing people that each have contrarian visions about what the world should look like. And they're clashing right now. And it's manifesting itself in politics, but in culture also. And it's created a great deal of emotion. But while there certainly are people that are Breaking Bad and they're shooting people every now and then, let's remember that we have 340 million people in the United States of America. And we, through our modern communications and cable TV, can hone in like a laser beam on that one nut job that does something crazy and then universalize that as though somehow this is a national issue, when really it isn't. It's just that guy.
But now we all know about it, and we've all gotten 17 notifications about the same event, and then I talk to someone, so we just amplify and create an echo chamber around some of these small events.
Exactly, because of the communication society that we have emerged into right now. It makes the world very different. It also elevates the emotion and tensions within the society at the same time.
How does this new communication affect the demands on a leader or on leadership today?
Oh, it's quite great. It's quite great. I've said over and over again, you cannot underestimate the importance of messaging. In the old days, they called it propaganda. People understood that they were delivering a message to try to persuade people to think in a particular way. Well, we have that now, except that the vehicles for it are much more are much more prevalent than they've ever been before because of cable TV and radio and the internet and LinkedIn and Facebook. People can express themselves much more easily now than ever before. So that's the kind of society we're living in at this point. And the message, though, is extremely important. You know,
I suspect when you were governor, you probably felt you had some control over the message, or maybe not even then, 20 plus years ago. But now I feel like it's very difficult for many politicians to even control the message. They may get it for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, but the narrative can shift instantly.
well, your political adversaries want to see to shift that message. They're in the business of shifting that message. And so that's the conflict in a free society with free speech that we're in right now. And yes, you have to develop the messaging and communication skills to be able to stay on target. I mean, I'll give you an example that my friends always talk to me about this. And that is that my message when I was running for governor was I wanted to cut the car tax. Took the state by storm. I was elected governor overwhelmingly because my message overbore the whole election. So, the message was extremely powerful and extremely important. But, my staff always said to me, the truth is, Jim, that if the Martians landed and said, we're here now to visit Earth, you would say, well, do you have a car tax on Mars? And I was sticking to the message all the time because it was working. It was my way of communicating to the electorate.
Was there a moment when that came to you as a strategy during the campaign that, okay, here's my winning message?
I come to you in this interview with an abiding faith in the public. I truly believe that the public does control things. I believe that. I think they have a higher duty than they're implementing right now, citizenship, than we're seeing right now. But the American democracy is as firm as the Rock of Gibraltar. We still have elections. People still vote. And the truth is that all the noise to the contrary, there is no impediment to voting in this country. And the people have an opportunity to express themselves completely. So I guess that, what I would say to you, Ian, is that I'll tell you the story of how this came to pass. We polled when I was getting ready to run for governor to see what the public thought about the issues. And we found that the public cared mostly about education. We said, well, that's all right. We can address that. Then we also polled, and we found that people seem to care a lot about taxes. And we said, well, we're Republicans. We're in favor of cutting taxes. That's a good thing. So we went off, and I gave a speech when I announced in Roanoke, and there was a room full of people, and I said, and we're going to do something about education and add more teachers. And I got nice applause. And I said, and then we're going to cut the car tax. And there was this roar. And I got off the stage and I looked at my people and I said, what was that? And they said, I don't know. Maybe we better try that again. So then we went to Northern Virginia the same day and we were outside in an amphitheater. And I said, well, let's see. So I said, education first. And I got polite applause. And then I said, and then we're going to cut the car tax. And there was an unearthly animal-like roar that came out of the crowd. And I went back behind the stage and I said, that's our issue.
Listen to the people.
Listen to the people.
So I'm glad to hear, even though I take a slightly different perspective on how easy it is to vote or hard it is to vote, but I'm glad to hear that your confidence in the core mechanisms of our democracy. Are you confident in our democracy?
Yes, I am. And when I was ambassador and we were watching the riots during Black Lives Matter, and the European ambassadors were kind of talking to me about it. And they said, does this really shake the American democracy? And I said, no. We're as firm as the Rock of Gibraltar. We have a constitution. We all believe in it. There is no coup d'etat possible. There is, we are a rule of laws. The United States is firmly fixed on democracy, and I have no doubt about it then. I have no doubt about it now.
So do you have ideas about how we can give that same confidence to our students? Because I think there are many young people today who are not so sure about democracy. I think they take it for granted. I think they don't realize the obligations of citizenship that you've talked about. and it's easier to tweet or Snapchat or Instagram some easy dismissal about some of the privileges and rights and responsibilities that have been bequeathed to us by generations fighting for democracy.
Well, why would they be completely confident in democracy? They're being taught that democracy is shaky. It's a false message, but that's what they're being taught. They're being taught it every day on cable news. They're being taught it probably in the classrooms. They're being taught all the time that the democracy is in danger. Why wouldn't they believe that it's in danger? That's what they're being taught. But the truth is not that. The truth is that the American democracy and republic is firm and fixed. There's no threat to it at all. As I've said before, if you ever see the U.S. military or the police forces beginning to move against the democracy, that's when you better sit up and take notice. There's no evidence of that in the United States of America.
And yet you are concerned, I think largely because of foreign adversaries, but you are concerned about the rise of authoritarianism.
I am, in the world. The danger today is actually quite serious, and it's rising. And it's because look, I believe, maybe I'm wrong, but I think I'm not wrong. I believe that authoritarianism is rising in Russia. It's not mysterious. You can look at it and see it. And in China, which is worse. Do you know that the Uyghurs in China are being put into sort of like re-education concentration camps?
It's horrendous.
Do you know that they have civil scoring for all their citizens? And if you don't measure up to towing the line in China, you can't send your kid to college. You can't get on a train. Do you know in Russia that if you want to put your head up and run against Vladimir Putin in an election, which is probably a fake election to begin with, you may be like Navalny and put into prison and given 19 years in prison. Or if you want to challenge the dictator, you may be in the middle of an airplane crash. Or actually, when I was ambassador, there was an assassination that took place in Vienna by the Russians against a dissident from Eastern Europe in a parking lot in a mall about 2 kilometers from my embassy. Well, this kind of thing sends a message into the body politic everywhere that if you actually try to exercise democracy, you will be killed or put into prison. These are the elements of authoritarianism that we don't have here and that we can't have to be cautious that they never emerge.
Right. So I assume, I hope, actually, I won't even assume, I hope you are talking to students frequently, and whether it's at the high school level, elementary school level, or college and graduate school. What is the key message you hope they take away from their time with you?
The duty of citizenship. In the world, in America today, and actually in the world today, it's really easy to become passive. It's very easy to say, well, I can become an audience to these views. I can listen to things that are being opinion pieces that are put out, and I have no duty to really exercise any citizenship. We eliminated the duty of military service. I actually went in the military because I was going to get drafted, so I joined. It was one of the great experiences of my life, and I'm very proud of the duty and the service that I did to the United States and the United States military. But nobody's subjected to that anymore, and it's very much easier to just go do something else. There's no sense, I think, right now. No, I think in a large part of the population, there's no sense of duty to the body of politic of the United States and loyalty to the country. You have a football team that pretends that it represents the United States and won't salute the national anthem, the way the adversarial team from Vietnam did for their national anthem. You have students that put obscenities on their doors. You have professors that cover up Thomas Jefferson, one of the greatest Americans that ever lived. Thomas Jefferson wrote one of the 2 most important documents in the history of mankind. The first probably being Magna Carta, and the second the Declaration of Independence. And a professor at the University of Virginia shrouded his statue. These are the messages that are going to young people right now that take on the guise of debate and liberty, but they're corrosive to the duty that we have and the challenges and the crises that are upon us.
So a counter argument to that is actually this spirit of protest is actually what defines America. It's not the revering of an individual as good as he or she may have been. It's actually practicing the rights of dissent and practicing the right to actually critique. That actually is the embodiment of American democracy.
It is. There are two aspects of that, it seems to me. One is, do you have the right to do it, or even the duty to do it? And you do. And here in this country, we protect that right. We're very faithful about it. And the second, though, is you have a duty to understand whether the message of the protest is legitimate or not, whether it's right or whether it's wrong. Sometimes we conflate those things. We say, well, we can protest, so naturally the message is right. It isn't necessarily.
Nope, a lot of protests have bad messages, but even that, going back to the trust of people, is, in that exchange, we hope, and hopefully we have highly talented people pushing the strong values and good values. But in that exchange, there's going to be a competition, and people will ultimately come to reject the bad ideas.
Yes, and the role of protest is perfectly legitimate, particularly if you're trying to get the attention of citizens and try to raise them up in order to exercise their citizenship. Sometimes jarring protest may do that. I'm just saying that we have an obligation to actually assess the message and decide whether it's right, wrong, helpful to the country, or harmful to the country. I mean, we have a right to do that too.
Yeah, and one of the things I hope that we inspire in our leadership and public policy students at the Batten School is, don't be afraid to hear ideas that you don't like, and then apply some analytical tools to assess them, and actually take some initiative, and you lead for the ideas that you do believe in and you do think are right.
That's right. That's right. Patience, listen, take initiative.
Do you have a final word or final words of advice for students or faculty at the Batten School?
America has at this moment in history, America has a unique role in the world. And we have it whether we like it or not. And we're not going to be able to play that critical role in history right now unless we have young people coming along who are willing to exercise that initiative, take those risks, and bring things out to a better day. There's no better country than the United States of America to afford that opportunity. The Batten School is teaching people to take advantage of it.
On that, we absolutely agree. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you.